Good morning, and thanks for joining us this Thursday morning, July 16th, the 51st anniversary of the Apollo 11 launch to the moon, for live coverage of the continued efforts to upgrade the International Space Station's power channels. I'm Leah Cheshire, and this is a live feed from the space station's Quest airlock, where astronauts are continuing procedures to prepare themselves and the airlock itself for today's extravehicular activity. This will be the 230th spacewalk in the history of station assembly and maintenance. Today's spacewalk is scheduled to last approximately 6.5 hours and is scheduled to begin at 6:35 a.m. Central Time, with the crew moving smoothly through preparations to make it out of the hatch on time. Today is NASA astronaut Bob Behnken's 9th spacewalk. You can see him at the top of your screen there with the red stripes around the legs of his spacesuits. That means he is EV-1 or Spacewalker 1. It's also the 9th spacewalk for NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy, the current commander of the International Space Station. He's EV-2, and at the bottom of the screen he has no stripes at the bottom of his spacesuit. The goal of today's 6.5-hour spacewalk is to remove 5 of 6 nickel-hydrogen batteries and install 3 lithium-ion batteries and adapter plates on the space station. The final nickel-hydrogen battery is scheduled to be removed on an upcoming spacewalk next Tuesday, July 21st. As you can see in the dimensions, the batteries are quite large, so there will be a lot of communications between the astronauts when moving the batteries from one platform to another. That's called shepherding or inchworming, moving it slowly down the truss segment, and they'll call out to each other to confirm one of them has hands on the battery at all times as they move along. Currently, the International Space Station is flying northwest of Australia in the Indian Ocean, moving 263 statute miles an hour. The International Space Station orbits Earth 16 times a day. We're seeing 16 sunrises and sunsets, so we will see the darkness and lightness vary throughout the time the astronauts are outside the hatch today. Doug Hurley and Yvonne Wagner will soon begin moving NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy into the crew lock portion of the airlock. Meanwhile, teams on the ground have polled go for depress here in about 18 minutes. At that time, the hatch between the crew lock portion of the Quest airlock and the equipment portion, where you see Doug Hurley at this moment, that'll be closed, and it'll bring the pressure down to a vacuum, matching exactly what is outside before the astronauts open the hatch and begin their day. And NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy has now been moved into the crew lock portion of the Quest airlock.
The thermal cover is open. I'm egressing.
We copy. Bobby, I want to inspect your safety tether reel on the forward D-ring.
My safety tether reel on the forward D-ring looks to be in good shape.
Copy that. Chris, you'll be...
With the load rebearing strap verified unlocked.
We copy unlocked. And Chris, over to you how you want to do this, but you want to get ready to the S3 boom with your BRT ret, and then we're going to do some checks to make sure the camera's fully installed before you hand the RU bag out.
Okay, copy. Forward.
And with that, we are ready to start translating. Bob, you have the lead, and heads up to both of you to avoid the deployed tusk cable all day, Zenith and Nader Cedar rail.
Copy, copy.
You can now see our astronauts have egressed or exited the hatch.
Take your adjustables out, your fair leads out, leave the adjustables in place on the rail.
B1 copy, B2 copy. Have arrived at 3410.
The astronauts are now moving to their work sites.
I'll just do yours as well. Okay. Thank you. Sure.
Bob Behnken, or EV1, will make his way out to the S6 truss. He'll begin setting up the work site for those battery swaps today. There are also 6 adapter plates under those batteries to keep them warm, and 3 empty slots. By the end of today's spacewalk, we will see 5 nickel-hydrogen batteries removed and replaced with 3 lithium-ion batteries and 2 adapter plates.
Bit of a long blockage there, but we're back with you now. I see the PGT and we're ready. Your settings are Alpha 7, counter 2.
Alpha 7, counter 2 is set.
Copy. We want to confirm socket tape line flush on the H1 scoop, and then you'll be go to turn to release. We expect 8 turns.
We'll then work with Bob Behnken to transfer it down to the IEA, the Integrated Electronics Assembly.
I have loaded. I do have my ret locked out with some slack.
Copy that. We're expecting 19 turns here.
This is the second of 2 bolts required to release that nickel-hydrogen battery from the Integrated Electronics Assembly.
I think that's all the way out. Agree. Got it. That's your PGT. Got it. Ready when you are. Got it.
H2 scoop going to Chris.
Scoop going to Chris. Copy. You can really tell how much different these batteries are than the new ones. Noticeable. Ready? Control. I have control. I will release my wrench.
And battery 2, a nickel hydrogen battery, has been removed from the integrated electronics assembly.
Second, I have control. Switch my wrist. I have control. Okay, you have control and you have the red. I have control and the red. Okay. I will egress.
And you see Bob Behnken egress or exit that articulating portable foot restraint. He will join Chris Cassidy and the two will work together to move the battery to the external pallet. Once the battery arrives at the external pallet, Chris Cassidy will work to install it.
Let's do a vertical down past you. Okay. If that helps you. Yeah.
But not before removing an adapter plate. The battery that was just removed will go into the slot of the adapter plate, which will be removed next. And that adapter plate will be moved to the integrated electronics assembly.
Ready? Yep. I have control of the battery. You have control of the battery. Clear of it? You are clear. Oh, wow. One battery base over makes a big difference. Not quite yet. Okay, I have control. You have control.
We see the wave, Chris. You can check the ingress aid is tucked, and then the battery can come out H2 into your left hand.
H2 into your left hand.
A wave from Chris Cassidy, who has just released adapter plate F and passed it off to Bob Behnken. Coming up next, he'll install battery 2, that nickel hydrogen battery, onto the external pallet, right where you see his reflection at this moment.
Doug, I'm about to put a little bit of force into the pallet.
Copy, brakes are on, you're clear.
Okay. Leave it soft dock, Josh.
Copy that, Chris. PGT settings Alpha 7 clockwise 2.
Alpha 7 clockwise 2.
Good settings. Confirm socket tape line flush to H2. We're turning to torque 16 or 17 turns.
It's all the way to unlocked with the On the indicator with 2 additional turns.
Copy.
David? And it is free. So I'm going to hand it off to you. And I will move the PFR.
We concur. Suggested roll setting of Delta.
Copy. There was only a Delta in my HUD to tell me where Delta was. Okay, I have control and I have a rep. Can I just move it up just a little bit? Yep. Up towards your head? Yep, towards my head. It's good right there. Okay. I'm in. I'm ready to shoot the battery. I will need to tether, or can you continue to translate? I think I can translate. Okay, you pull me a little.
And a final reminder to make sure the gap spanner and cables are clear of slot 2.
Copy. Cable is clear. Yeah, gap spanner, I got it. Yeah, a little bit of gap spanner. Okay. Looks lined up. It always seems so high. Yeah. Okay, you need a PGT, I guess.
And Bob, just curious, is that camera working for you nominally now with the shutter release?
I'm not getting a green light indicating there's a picture being saved. I do see the red focus come on when I push the button, but it does look like it remains out of focus.
Copy, thanks.
And no green light, and it, like I said, stays out of focus.
Okay, we check. If it helps, you can still use the original button is what we're hearing here, and that'll work.
Okay. Coming out, Bob. Copy. Rotating. Released. Clears.
And we see the wave, Chris. We want to check ingress aid tucked, and then we'll be grabbing the battery from your BRT H1 in your left hand.
H1 in my left hand. Ingress aid tucked.
Copy. Here, go to soft dock.
Cassidy is now preparing to soft dock. The battery 4, a nickel hydrogen battery, just removed from the integrated electronics assembly onto the external pallet where he just removed an adapter plate.
I'm coming into the battery's going in.
Of our two spacewalkers, you can see right now Chris Cassidy on the left and Bob Behnken on the right.
Copy, Bob. You can ingress. Keep an eye on your tethers and ingress aid.
16.5 turns, green torque light at 9.1 foot-pounds. And the indicator is locked. And the battery's flush with its neighbor.
Copy, Chris, 9.1 green light and locked. Just confirm for me, was that 18 or 19 on the turns?
16.5.
Perfect, 16.5. Chris, you can stow the PGT. Those two scoops are going to be going to battery C, Charlie.
Battery C, Charlie.
And Chris, with regards to the ORU bag, we do have a bit of an evolving plan here on the ground, and I'll bring that to you in the next few minutes. But for the bag itself, we'd like it bundled up, packed, closed, and just left in place where it is right now.
IEA side is a good EMI band, no thought in the electrical connectors, both mechanical interfaces to a clear thought, and the pins look straight on the cold plate. I'll give you inspection of the adapter plate here in a minute.
Copy, Bob.
Two to 3 o'clock. Hey Josh, I'm ready with the adapter plate. It's soft docked. I've got the PGT Alpha 7, clockwise 2 is set.
Copy, Bob. Good settings. Confirm one line flush on H2 side. We'll drive to torque, expecting 16 to 17.
One line flush on the H2 side. Copy 16 to 17 turns. Hey Josh, I've got the TA clamps released.
Copy, Bob. So we can demate the adapter plate connector P4.
Connector up.
Affirmative. Here we go.
You can see the Canadarm2 is now moving into its next position, carrying that external pallet.
Ingress 8 is all the way swished back.
Copy, Chris, thanks.
Behnken has recently completed the installation of the adapter plate E into slot 4 on the integrated electronics assembly. He'll need to mate some cables to the adjacent lithium-ion battery to complete that installation.
See, what's the next big chunk?
So, Chris, you're just coming back out to the IEA, and then we'll be helping Bob to move battery 6 over to slot 4. It's an IEA swap.
6 to 4. 6 to 4, copy that. Okay. You know, when you're, looks like you're BRT'd. I'm BRT'd. And ready. Okay.
NASA astronauts Chris Cassidy and Bob Behnken are continuing to work together to remove battery 6. Following its removal, they'll work together to place it into slot E, which will be its new permanent home.
Line visible.
All good words will break to a max 1 turn.
For the turn, here comes H2.
Copy.
Just to confirm, you're tethered to the hand, not to the black face. Good. And you got the handrail part. Perfect.
We see it looks good.
That's Chris Cassidy in the center of your screen working to install that battery on the external pallet. You will see that external pallet is in the grip of the Canadarm2. Today the Canadarm2 was controlled by Doug Hurley, an astronaut also aboard the International Space Station.
Got my weave on. At the inboard, see the cart?
Copy, Bob.
And Bob, I'm just arriving at the airlock. Copy that, Chris. Thermal cover open.
Copy, Chris. Chris, you can work to stow the ORU bag, and then you'll be attaching your waist tether to the D-ring extender.
Okay, copy all. Closed and locked. Waist tether. Point to the D-ring extender, and the waist tether crew side hook is also closed and locked.
We copy.
You can see NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy has made his way back to the Quest airlock. We are now 5 hours and 31 minutes into today's spacewalk. This was the 6th spacewalk of this year and the 3rd spacewalk for the Expedition 63 crew. It's the 9th spacewalk for Bob Behnken, who has a total of 55 hours and 41 minutes of EVA time. It was also the 9th spacewalk for NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy, who now has 49 hours and 22 minutes of spacewalk time. Today's spacewalk lasted exactly 6 hours And in total, that brings the total amount of spacewalk time at the International Space Station to 60 days, 6 hours, and 34 minutes.
Continuing.
Once again, you're now hearing the voice of NASA astronaut Anne McClain, who will walk the crew through their procedures to doff or take off their suits. The astronaut and cosmonauts now moving Chris Cassidy into the equipment lock portion of the crew, or of the Quest airlock. With the 6 hours of spacewalk time today, that puts NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy 12th on the all-time list for cumulative spacewalk time, now with 49 hours and 22 minutes in the vacuum of space. That safer backpack being removed from NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy's spacesuit. We didn't see the safer or the simplified aid for EVA rescue used today. That compressed nitrogen-powered backpack allows a crew member to maneuver independently of the space station, but it's primarily intended for use if a spacewalker became detached and needed to maneuver back.